Hi, folks. Sorry about that. We didn't get our coffee this morning and ran into some technical difficulties. So we're a little late. I apologize. I especially apologize to our guest since he's having to do this for the second time now. But our guest today is Greg Smith with the Office of Emergency Management, and he's going to take you through some business continuity planning for crises just like this one. After he calls me a few names.
Well, I just want to say I don't have all the answers, but I will help as best I can. I was almost completely through with the presentation earlier before I was told that we weren't actually showing it to anyone. And if I do say so myself, it was one of the better presentations I've ever made. I hope that this one will be equally as good. So let's talk
spectacular.
Let's talk a little bit about continuity of operations planning. And we can go ahead and just go to the next slide. There we go. We have found that oftentimes small businesses and a number of nonprofits do not have continuity of operations plans. And frankly, even those businesses that have just very few employees, it's important to have a continuity of operations plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that is and what we need to do with that. And simply put, continuity of operations plan is just a plan that allows you to remain operational and viable across a broad range of emergencies or disasters. And of course, today we're gonna put a little bit of the COVID-19 spin on things, but what we're talking about today is important, frankly, to any business, regardless of the type of emergency or disaster that we're talking about. So let's take a look at some of the goals of COOP planning. Obviously, that top bullet point is important right now with regard to keeping your employees safe, keeping your employees from being susceptible to the COVID virus. There are different ways that we can talk about that in a moment. Of course, obviously, one of the ways is allowing those employees to work remotely if possible. If their job functions can be done from a remote location effectively, then that certainly is an important thing to consider. Any business, regardless of size, will have essential business functions. And those are the things that have to be maintained for that business to remain viable. Of course, some of the business functions that are essential are your accounts receivables, payables, payroll, your orders to your different companies, IT functions. There are other functions that don't necessarily have to be maintained for your business to remain viable in an emergency, such as housekeeping or newsletters or things of that nature. But it's important to be able to identify those essential functions and then to be able to identify the vital records and the databases and the personnel that are required and the equipment that is required so that those essential functions can still be maintained. And that's all a part of the process. Now, as far as protecting facilities and equipments and records, that is something that typically is a bigger priority in natural disaster, where you have the potential for your facilities to be damaged. But obviously, we still need to be able to protect our records to support those essential functions. It's also important to take in mind what kind of family support there is, how your employees are dealing with any of the anxiety that may come up with being sure that their families are okay. And this is something that at least needs to be discussed and worked with your employees on so that they can function, they can focus more on their job functions and not have to worry about their families. If we go to the next slide, we can take a look at some more of those elements of a COOP plan. Hazards, risk, and vulnerability. As business owners, you all need to take a look at what your hazards, risks, and vulnerability happens to be. And this can be things with regard to natural disaster. It could be you're located next to a railroad yard, and so you have to take special precautions because of hazardous materials being close by. Obviously, in this particular scenario, we're looking at the hazard of the COVID-19 virus. Then we have to look at the risk from that virus. And risk is essentially just the probability that that hazard is going to affect us. Well, essentially, everything we're hearing is that the risk for this is high. So we have to take that into account. We have to take into account also the vulnerability of those people who work for us. If we have a work group that consists primarily of folks who are in a high-risk group, that is older adults or adults who already have some sort of a pulmonary issues, heart disease, diabetes, then it's going to be important that we do the best that we can to keep those folks safe. And if those folks have the opportunity to work remotely, that's going to be more important for them too. We've kind of covered essential functions there. Delegation of authority is important. Depending on the size of the business, of course, you may have a business that consists of just a very few people, and delegation of authority may not be something that can actually go into play. But it's important to be able to delegate authority to someone that's subordinate, say, to the chief executive, and that plays directly into orders of succession. If cross training can be very important for a viable COOP plan, so that you've got more than one individual in virtually any job function that knows how to perform that function. Alternate facilities don't really come into play with regard to COVID, except for the fact that we could consider remote work to be alternate facilities. I'm going back and forth, frankly, between our emergency operations center and my home. One day I'm working out of home because I have the capacity to be able to do essentially everything I do at the emergency operations center from my home, and that gives me a little bit of a respite from the goings on in our emergency operations center. We have to look real hard at communication. Redundant communication is important. Being able to get in touch with everybody you need to be able to get in touch with. And of course, fortunately, nowadays we have cell, we have text, we have email, we have communication such as what we're using today to talk to each other. So you've got to be able to get in touch with your employees if they're working remotely. You need to still be able to get in touch with your suppliers, with anyone who is a part of any of those essential functions, who does not necessarily work for your company. Your creditors, probably, obviously, you need to be able to get in touch with them. We kind of touched on vital records and databases. And again, those are the records, the databases, and the personnel and equipment that is necessary for you to be able to sustain the essential functions that we spoke about earlier. Another thing that sometimes that small businesses don't look at because of potential expense is insurance. And there is insurance, of course, that's available that will help a business with regard to being able to maintain payroll and certain other operational costs. Now, fortunately, hopefully, and certainly I can't say for surety at this point, but with the programs and the legislation that's being put forth at the federal level, hopefully there will be support in one or more ways to small businesses who suffer because of this COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, that type of information it will be made public as it comes along. And certainly I would encourage people to be curious and to look at the FEMA website with regard to information relative to that, and certainly to take a look at the Small Business Administration website, and you may get information from either of those that would be important to you being able to receive any sort of funding that becomes available. I think probably if Jeremy, if you think that this is the appropriate time, we could open it up for questions, or I'm happy to go into greater depth about any of these things that we've discussed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we can open up to questions now. If you have a question, just type it into the Q&A panel, and I'll be taking a look at those and giving them to Greg as they come in. I'll start off with a pretty generic question here, Greg. As all of this develops and goes on, where would you recommend people go to stay up to date with the most current information?
Well, I'll tell you, there have been a couple of places. I have found that the Chattanooga Times has they have a COVID specific page online, and you don't have to have a subscription to the Times to get that information. Frankly, every morning when I come in, I check that for new information that they have gathered, and I print that out and keep it in my COVID-19 book. Also, you could go to, I know that the United Way has a lot of information on their website as to what's going on in the community, because a lot of these things, though the United Way focuses mostly on nonprofits, there are still a number of activities going on in the community that are going to touch upon small businesses that may be services that can help the small businesses.
And you guys at the Office of Emergency Management are usually equipped to help people when putting together COOP plans, correct?
Certainly, we're available now. Our availability right now is probably not so great, but
Sure.
but traditionally, yes, we have put on presentations. This same presentation has been made before to a group of nonprofits, because essentially nonprofit and small business COOP planning is very similar. But we are available. You can reach out to our offices. You can go to our website, which is hamiltonready.org, and find contact information for the folks in our office, including mine. And we can help. We can sit down with a small business and just talk about some of these things, and how to create that plan, and be sure that they're maybe a little bit better prepared for any type of emergency.
And we do have one question that sort of folds into that. Where can I find a good template for COOP planning? Is that something that's available on your website?
On our website, if you navigate our website, you will ultimately find a spot that is specific to business continuity planning. And on there, you should have a couple of links that will help. Also, you can just Google FEMA COOP planning template, and that will kind of give you an indication of how the flow of a COOP plan should be. And generally, thank goodness for Google, you can simply Google small business COOP planning template, and you will probably find a number of templates that will cover what we've looked at here in this presentation.
Okay. What are some essential documents that small businesses need to have on hand in their COOP plan?
Well, any document that you have to have for your business to run, and of course those documents may be electronic, they may be hard copy, but records that have to do with personnel, records that have to do with any suppliers that you deal with, records and documents associated with your accounting department, all of the documents that you consider to be important and you have filed away either electronically or in a cabinet, you realize it's important to go away.
Okay. I think we might have had a little bit of an audio issue there, Greg. You were fading out a little. Do you think you could repeat that? Sorry.
Well, I've gotten used to repeating things since we've done this.
Sorry.
Yeah. You want me to start over again? Just do the whole thing? Okay.
Yeah, one more time from the top, please.
Okay, here we go. No, important documents, I think, are those documents that are essential to you being able to continue to operate your business. So obviously, any of those documents, whether they be electronic, whether they're on the cloud, whether they're in hard copy, accounts receivables and payable documents, payroll documents, personnel documents, documents that have to do with your supply chain, all of those types of things, the things that are important enough that you don't discard them.
Okay. And we will include this in the notes when we publish the archive of this video. It will be made available after the fact. So if people couldn't, watch it live, they can tune in later. But let me go ahead and ask you while we are live, what is the address for your website?
It is hamiltonready.org, and it's chock full of great information. Some of that information is not that easy to find right off the bat, but if you navigate all the tabs, you can find business continuity operation information. You can also find some very important family disaster planning information, and we've just tried to make that as comprehensive as possible for the citizens of Hamilton County.
Okay. Sorry. What advice do you have for prioritizing business functions?
Well, it's kind of hard, I think, to prioritize, because obviously if your payroll function goes down, well, then the rest of your functions don't really make a whole lot of difference if nobody's working for you. So it's difficult really to prioritize. That's why they're called essential functions. There's not really a priority. It's the functions that your business must be able to continue to remain operational and viable.
Okay. I think that's all the questions we have for the time being. Again, I want to thank Greg for being here and doing this. I know he's really busy right now, and I think I speak for all of us when I say we appreciate the hard work you and the other folks in the operations center over there are doing right now, keeping us all safe and informed as best you can. Thank you again for being here.
Well, thank you, and thank the Chamber for everything that they're doing, because I know a lot of hard work is being done now. We appreciate the partnership with the Chamber, and we will remain in contact with you guys and available if you need us.
Okay, and we'll be doing some more of these as the weeks and months continue. So stay tuned here. Stay tuned to our social media feeds, our website. And we'll let you know when these are coming. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.